Hi, my name is Savannah and welcome to my first video. So the reason why I am making this channel and doing this is because I recently lost my daughter in my second trimester, so at about 21 weeks and 3 days due to incompetent cervix. And I just wanted to make this video to kind of be that voice for women who don't get out and talk about, loss of their child or, dealing with incompetent cervix. Because I will say, when I was going through my loss, that was probably the one thing that got me through, was constantly watching other mothers and hearing their story and kind of knowing I'm not the only one, and hearing it from different perspectives, and what to expect the next time around and how things kind of fell into play for them. It was kind of comforting to know, like, I'm really not the only one that did go through this. Okay, so I'm gonna start from the beginning. My fiance and I have been together for 4 years. A couple years ago in 2018, we found out we were pregnant, but unfortunately had a very early miscarriage. Obviously no say as to the cause, it just happened. We went in for our first ultrasound and they just kind of told us, unfortunately, there's an empty sac, and that was basically it. Didn't have to have a D&C or anything like that. And we talked about after that having kids, but we weren't necessarily trying, but weren't preventing either, until October of 2020. In the midst of the pandemic and quarantine, we found out we were pregnant. We had the doctor's appointment the very next week, and unfortunately, because of COVID, he was unable to come to any of the appointments with me. So it was kind of like I would go in and take videos of the ultrasound. But the very first one, I remember I cried because I was like, it was just surreal seeing a baby and that this was happening for us. We were over the moon excited. Our family was so excited and supportive. So the very first ultrasound was the most beautiful thing. Couldn't see anything but a little beating heart. That's really it. And then I had ultrasounds every month. Everything was pretty normal. We did have a scare in my 3rd month of pregnancy. I passed a very large clot, and immediately my in-laws came, called 911, and when the paramedics came, they took a look at the clot and they told me it was my baby. They said, unfortunately, I'm so sorry, you had a miscarriage. Obviously, I was distraught, and then I went straight to the hospital, and every doctor there told me, yes, you miscarried, I'm so sorry, the nurses are apologizing. And for some reason, I had it in the back of my head. I was like, I don't think I miscarried, I think everybody's wrong. And in the end, they ended up doing an ultrasound, and we found out my baby was perfectly fine. I just passed a blood clot for whatever reason. And then it was a few weeks after that we found out the gender to my baby. Well, we went to go do the scanning and everything, and my cousin had the envelope to set up our gender reveal the very next day. And then found out we were having a little girl. And then the next couple weeks we kind of spent like picking out a name and all that fun stuff. I set up a registry finally. So that was really fun. Picking out the name was pretty easy. Him and I both agreed on Gracelyn Rose, and both of us fell in love with that name. We already felt like it fit her before even meeting her. And then that was around, I would say, 19 weeks. The next few weeks kind of went on as normal, miserable pregnant. And then that's kind of where things took a negative turn. I was to go in for my 21-week anatomy scan, and for whatever reason, my OBGYN's office called me. They canceled my appointment, pushed it back for the next week, and I was already kind of upset about it because I hadn't seen my daughter since for like 2 months. I didn't see like an ultrasound or anything from my OBGYN. So obviously I was like upset about that. But I was like, that's fine, I'll just see her next week. But then something felt really off, and my fiance didn't kind of know how to feel about it. But I was like, I think there's something wrong. So I'm calling like these little like mom and pops places that like just get you in for an ultrasound, or they do like the gender reveal screening. Like, I just wanted to go in to make sure she was okay. I don't know if it's because she wasn't moving as much or what, but something wasn't right. So as the day kind of went on and I'm calling places, TMI, I noticed I was losing a lot of discharge, and it wasn't normal. I knew it wasn't normal. So of course I'm looking it up, I'm describing it on Google, and I get everybody saying it's your mucus plug, it's your mucus plug. I'm looking at images and it's exactly what it was. So I immediately call my gyno and I'm like, listen, I think I'm losing my mucus plug, which your mucus plug comes out before you give birth. And I'm like, that's weird, that shouldn't be happening to me. And you know, in some women it does, you know, grow back or whatever the case. But my gyno was like, listen, you need to come in, we believe you're going into preterm labor. So we got in the car and went straight to my OBGYN, and in my head I'm not thinking anything about incompetent cervix. I've never even heard that term before. I'm just thinking maybe she passed in my belly. So I get there, he still can't go inside with me, unfortunately. And I go in and the tech is in there doing my ultrasound, and I don't even want to look at the screen because I don't want to see my daughter not moving or her heart not beating. But she kind of shows me, she's like, no, she's okay in there, she's happy as a clam. And I will remember that forever, because she was like, she's happy as a clam, she's doing okay. And then she left the room and said she was gonna go talk to the my doctor about what she found. And then the doctor came in and sat down, and she handed me tissues, and she was like, I'm so sorry, you have something called incompetent cervix. And I didn't know what to think. Again, I didn't know what it was. And she gave me a quick rundown of it because she said I needed to hurry up and get to labor and delivery. So she kind of broke it down. She was like, a normal woman's cervix is at a 40. So let's say an example, your cervix is like this. Baby sits up here, right? But mine was at a 0.3. So normal is at a 40. I was at a 0.3. So she was hanging on literally by a thread. Yeah, so she basically breaks that down for me. And then she's like, don't go home. Don't pack a bag. Don't do anything, don't stop and get gas, go straight to the hospital across the street and go into labor and delivery, and we will meet you over there. So that's exactly what I did. Obviously bawling my eyes out at the thought of even losing my daughter. Like, this can't be happening, there's no way. And I remember saying like a week ago, like, wow, I'm halfway there. So this wasn't really processing that well with me. So I got in the car with my husband, our fiance, and he doesn't process it either, really. I think we were both like, no, everything's gonna be fine, everything's gonna be fine. We get to labor and delivery, we get checked in, they immediately lay me down on my hospital bed, and they kind of tilt it like this, so my legs were up in the air and my head was further back, so her pressure would get off of my cervix. And the doctor came in and she was like, listen, so we have a choice. We can do an emergency cerclage. So real quick, a cerclage is a cervical stitch. So they would take whatever cervix I had left and sew it together by a thread. And it kind of holds her in there until about 36 weeks. They take it out, or whatever the case may be, and they say, the high risk doctor will be here tomorrow and we will plan to have that surgery in the morning. So for the next morning to come, it feels like forever. We can't sleep even though we're exhausted. We've been crying all day about losing my daughter. We had a lot of things running through our mind, obviously, as you can probably imagine. And then of course our family can't be there for us. It's literally just me and him there, not knowing what to do, really. So it's just a waiting game. And I remember them telling me the risks of having a cerclage. So right when I would get like the epidural that would numb me down, they can open up my cervix to go sew it shut, and they can pop my water. I can get an infection, and they would forcefully have to deliver her. So a lot of risks, so obviously stressed out. And they also told me, you can be a candidate, but the high risk doctor is going to come and let you know if you are a good candidate for this procedure. And the main goal was to keep her in as long as we could. There was nothing I could do, obviously, but pray and hope for the best. And they said, unfortunately, if your water does break, there's nothing to reverse that. We have to deliver her. So there was a lot to kind of consider. The next morning, we're kind of waiting to hear from the high-risk doctor. He's not coming yet. And then he finally gets there. It's like a little past noon, and the nurse lady tells me, she's like, yeah, he should be coming in to do your procedure shortly. And I'm like, okay, cool. And then she comes in, she's like, Savannah, I'm so sorry. The lady next door is having an emergency. He has to go deal with her first. And not once did me or my fiance complain. We both sat there and prayed for the woman next door, and hoped everything was going to be okay. Because in my head, I'm not losing my daughter. I'm going to get this stitch. It's going to work out, and I'm going to have her in May of 2021. Unfortunately, did not happen that way. Right before he was going to come in and do the procedure, I felt like a rush, like I don't know, I felt like I peed myself, but I knew I didn't. So I called the doctors in, and I was like, I think my water broke. And it was only a little bit, so they tried testing it, and they were like, I don't think so, I think you're fine. And they put like a pad under me, and then I would say 30 minutes later, it happened again. And I was like, I hit my call button, and I was like, no guys, something's happening. I think my water broke, or I'm having some weird discharge, whatever. And she comes in and she grabs the tester, and she's like, well, if I touch this and it turns dark blue, that means it's testing for amniotic fluid, and that means your water did break, if that is the case. And I said, okay. And she put it in all the water I had just broke. And she said, yeah, your water broke. I am so sorry. And you can tell she kind of was hurt for me, because I had been so hopeful the whole time, thinking no, this is gonna work, this is gonna be fine. But when the first words out of her mouth were, I'm so sorry, and she was just like, your water broke, we're gonna have to cancel the surgery. And she kind of hugged me and rubbed me on the back, and then went to go tell the high-risk doctor that the procedure was off. And then the high-risk doctor still did come in and talk to me, and he was like telling me for next time, when I'm pregnant at 13 weeks, he will do the stitch so that this wouldn't happen again. And this next part is kind of where it even got harder than that. He gave us a decision and he said, you know, you have a choice. You can induce labor, so I can give you a pill to where it forces contractions and it basically forces your daughter to come out. But saying that she's only 21 weeks old, her lungs are not developed enough, and she will not make it. And I remember asking, like, is there anything you can do? Can you put her in, like, the NICU? Can you, like, have a machine breathe for her? And they said, unfortunately not, because of viability, I think that's the right word, I'm so sorry, is at 24 weeks. So if you have a baby even at 23 weeks and 6 days, they will not try to save the baby until you are 24 weeks and up. Then they will step in and, do everything they can to save the life, which obviously is not what I wanted to hear. So basically we had the choice to induce my labor and have her come out, but she's not gonna make it. Or even with my water broke, I go home, stay on bed rest, literally do not get up, do not move, use a bedpan to use the restroom, literally stay in bed and try to hold her in for another 3 weeks. Then she would be delivered at 24 weeks and they would be able to do what they can for her. But my doctor sat there and looked at me and she said, never in my 30 years of dealing with this have I seen a mother be able to hold on for that long without delivering her baby. And they said even if I did deliver her at 24 weeks, she would have so many health problems, like she could be blind, she can be deaf, she could not be able to move her arms or her legs. I can never say it right, so I do apologize. She could have cerebral palsy. So to me, it felt like I was in a literal movie. Like, you only hear of having to make these decisions in a movie, like maybe Grey's Anatomy or something, like, and that's what we were kind of stuck with making. So ultimately, we were able to sleep on it, and we wanted to check how much amniotic fluid was left inside of my belly, because the amniotic fluid that the baby lives in is what keeps them comfortable and allows them to breathe inside the womb. So we wanted to see how much I actually lost, and if there was still so much left in there, then we were gonna try that and try to wait it out, because we didn't want to, lose our daughter. Like, if she could have been a warrior and lasted in there longer than she did, then who are we to take that away? So again, the hardest decision, maybe you guys would have made a different choice and had her delivered right then and there, but we just didn't want to let go of the fact that we were going to lose our daughter. So the next morning, they come, they do the ultrasound, they're showing, she really doesn't have enough room in there, like the fluid is there's not a lot, but there is enough to where she's able to breathe in there. So we kind of were stuck with that same decision, like, what do we do? And they also had mentioned, if I start getting an infection, they do have to medically induce her. Like, I wouldn't have a choice, because they have to save the mother before they save the baby. And we were like, okay, well, we're gonna wait until If she wants to come on her own, we'll let her decide. If she wants to come out, she'll come out. That's ultimately what we decided. And then I had more water coming out later on, like I think it was like 2 hours later, and they came and she said, you know, it's kind of an off color. I believe you have an infection, so we're gonna start you on antibiotics. But unfortunately, now we have to move. We have to induce you, and you can't go home. We have to deliver your daughter now. So, of course, there was a lot of questions that came with that, because it wasn't my choice anymore. It was the doctors saying, you know, like, we have to deliver your daughter now. So my main question was, is this reported as like I'm aborting my baby? Because if I would have chosen to induce before I had an infection or anything like that, it's technically you aborting your pregnancy. And that's what kind of hurt me the most. You know, I wanted her more than anything. Like, I don't want to have to go to future doctor's appointments and be like, yeah, I had one abortion. Like, does that make sense? But she assured me, she's like, no, this is like medically induced. Like, you have to, we're not giving you a choice to keep your daughter anymore. Like, that's off the table. You are having an infection. It's very dangerous. So that is what we had to do. She gave me a pill inside of me, and immediately I was contracting. It was the worst pain I've ever been in, and I opted to do all natural. I didn't do epidural. I didn't do anything. But let me tell you, just because she was earlier on does not mean it hurts any less. That pain I cannot explain to anybody. I was throwing up. I was crying. I literally thought I was gonna pass out. I would try to drink water because I was like, my mouth was so dry from breathing so hard, you know, from trying to keep from passing out, and I would just throw it right back up. It was terrible. And I would say it took about, it was only like 2.5 hours. That's it. Like, I was in like labor, I guess, for 2.5 hours, if that. So I remember I was contracting and it was terrible. And then I told the nurse, I was like, I think she's coming soon, you can't leave. And she was like, no, like, it takes longer than that. And I was like, no, like, I feel her, like, she's gonna come out any second. And then she went to go do something, and then she came back and I was like, no, like, you need to stay here, like, she's coming out. And then she like went, felt in, and she was like, no, her head's still pretty up there. And I swear it was like 2 minutes later, she was out already, and she was like, oh yeah, she's out. And then they wrapped her up, cleaned her up, got footprints of her, and my fiance was actually the one to hold her first and see her first. I wasn't ready. I was in a lot of pain, and they were busy beating up my stomach, trying to get my placenta to come out, which also wasn't a good time. So it did hurt to kind of look over and see how hurt he was that we lost her, you know. He's crying, and I was just in so much pain. I couldn't feel anything. I was literally numb. And then finally my part was over. I think he spent at least like an hour with her before I was ready. And then I got to hold her, and they gave us a few hours alone with her. We took so many pictures of her. To me, she was the most beautiful baby. And I know a lot of people would not think the same because she wasn't as developed, but she looked exactly like her daddy. She had his nose, his lips, his ears, his legs, his toes, everything. She had my eyebrows though. I tell everybody that, like, she had my eyebrows. But obviously it was very hard. I think probably one of the hardest things too was calling the nurse back in there to take her away. Because we couldn't just hold on to her forever. I think that was hard. Like, I always planned on taking my baby home and I had to give her away. And that part was obviously very hard for both of us. And then they took her and we had to decide, you know, what cemetery to go through and whether we wanted her cremated or buried, have a funeral or private. Like, it was a terrible 2 days. So we decided to have her cremated, and we picked a cemetery, and then we had to like meet with them a couple days after, so obviously give us some time, and then we would go meet with them. I stayed in the hospital for another night after we lost her because, you know, after you have a baby, your body goes through so many changes. You can't like pee or poop the same right after. It sucks. And for sure, when I was discharged, it kind of hit all at once when we got in the car and we were leaving labor and delivery after just having a baby and not seeing a baby in the back seat. So we cried probably the whole way home. Yeah. Reliving it is tough. So when we got home, we kind of took a little bit of time for ourselves, and then my in-laws came over and we never really talked about it. I haven't talked about it with my family till this day. We haven't talked about it with his family really till this day. And I don't know, like, if we're ever going to be ready to talk about it. Sorry. Okay, so the first month was the absolute hardest, because my body's healing from having a baby without having a baby at home. Like, I was lactating, and that alone was a lot. And then coming home and seeing her crib and her bouncer and her rocker and all her clothes, her baby bag, oh my gosh, we had it all already. And I remember my in-laws asking, like, oh, do you want us to like put it away, like we'll hide it? And I was like, no, like, I don't want to try to get rid of everything and act like she was never gonna come, you know? Like, I don't want everything to go away in storage, or like, I just didn't want to erase her completely. Like, yes, it did hurt to look at, but I didn't want to erase her out of the picture, if that makes sense. So within the first week, I went through all different stages of grief. I was sad, depressed, I was angry, broke down all of her stuff, her rockers, her crib, I broke down. I shoved all her clothes in my trunk of my car. I wanted to get rid of everything. And then the next morning, sad, pulled it all out of my car. Felt like an idiot for doing it, but it's just the stages of grief that you go through. And I'm still going through them now, you know. We both are. But I will say my fiance was my rock throughout this whole entire thing. Absolutely the best man possible. And then it wasn't even, it was like a week later, my cousin who knew the gender to Graceland's gender, she was also having a baby. She was about 2 months behind me, so it was coming time for her gender reveal, and we already talked about how I would be the person to know the gender because she knew mine. So I went and picked up the envelope from her, and I did my reaction video as she did one for me. And I opened up the envelope, and she was having a girl. Probably wasn't the right time for me to be doing this, but I'm so happy for her. Obviously, you know, I was very hurt, didn't know how to feel, but I'm so excited that I'm gonna be having a little niece. And then my healing process, I feel like kind of started then. I started obsessing kind of over incompetent cervix and watching videos on YouTube and hearing these girls' experiences and kind of how it went, and that helped me a lot. I was on Google, I was on YouTube, I'm in Facebook groups for incompetent cervix, like constantly asking questions and hearing other girls' stories, and it's comforting. I don't know if that sounds wrong to say, but it's very comforting to know that I did not go through this alone. People go through this every day. But you know, now we know for next time, when I am 13 weeks pregnant, I am getting that stitch in, and just gonna hope for the best. I do want to say, a lot of people have been reaching out to me, texting me, DMing me, commenting on this or that, and they're all telling me, you know, Savannah, I envy you, you're so strong. Savannah, you're amazing, you're so strong. And as much as like I appreciate it, you know, I don't feel that way. I feel very weak. Because of course I can come on social media and be like, you know, we're doing great, we're getting married, we're healing, we this, we that. But I'm telling you, behind closed doors, I am still a disaster every single day. I go to work, I'm the happiest person there, you know, and the whole drive home, I'll just cry. I'll cry myself to sleep all the time. So I really wish people would stop telling me how strong I am, because I feel very weak. But I want to thank everybody who is watching this video and apologize if you are going through this, if you're watching this because you looked up incompetent cervix. I can't explain how I feel. I hurt for you because I would never wish this upon anybody else. And I'm sorry if this was all over the place. This is my first video. I feel very awkward talking to my camera. But I just want to thank you guys all for being on this journey with me. And my next video will be about trying to conceive again after a loss. So a little bit of background in that I do have PCOS, so I am on some kind of fertility helpers, which I will go over in my next video and kind of break things down of my trying to conceive plan that we have going on. Again, thank you all for watching this video. I really appreciate it. Thanks.